Story time on how my lifelong best friend and I found out that we're actually related. Submitted by Sydney. To preface this story, I am a white female and my lifelong best friend is African American. I'm mentioning this because it's relevant to the story. Now for some backstory, my best friend, who we'll call Dana, has been in my life since the 3rd grade. We originally met in the cafeteria on a day that I forgot my lunch. Due to the fact that I was on medication at the time, I needed to eat, but I kept quiet because I didn't want to make a fuss, as my mom would say. Luckily enough, Dana ended up noticing me sitting alone without food and decided to offer me her carrots, cucumbers, and one of her Oreo cookies. We have been friends ever since. Our parents weren't besties, but they spent quite a lot of time together because Dana and I spent every waking minute with each other. However, when we got to our senior year of high school, everything changed for us. At our school, you're required to do a senior project at the end of the year as a final, so I decided to do it on my family. I figured since I was going to be the first generation college student, it would be cool to trace where I came from to appreciate where I'm going. It made sense in my head, and my teacher thought it was a great idea, so since I wanted an A, I put all of my effort into it. Thankfully, my dad was my right-hand man when it came to navigating the ancestry information and tests online. After a few weeks, I completed my senior project and prepared it for class. This is where things got a little weird. So in true best friend fashion, I ended up showing the finished project to Dana at her house. Naturally, she thought it was great. Her mom, on the other hand, stopped what she was doing and focused all her attention on my project. I won't lie, I thought she was interested in it because it was good and because I'm a genius. But when she started writing down some of the names and taking a keen interest in certain people, I started to get a little worried. Little did I know the story was so much deeper than I realized. After I finally submitted my project into school and received the A that I deserved, I received a text from my mom telling me that Dana's mom asked her to ride the bus with me so that we can come back to my house together. Now, this wasn't an unusual thing, but it didn't normally happen in the middle of the week, so both of us were a bit caught off guard. By the time we both reached my house, we found my parents and Dana's mom sitting together on the couch with a stack of documents in between them. I don't know what we were originally expecting, but Dana's mom opened the floor by telling us that the 2 people mentioned in my family tree were also mentioned in Dana's. According to records, Dana and I are cousins. Me, being the blunt, outlandish one, decided to mention the elephant in the room. We're related, but I'm white. I half expected my mom to give me an evil eye, or my dad to laugh. But instead, Dana's mom looked at mine and they both sighed. Dana, Sydney, I think you both should sit down. Dana's mom spoke in a voice that I had never heard her use before. It was a strange mixture of seriousness and concern. Either way, when Dana and I did sit down, we had no idea what we were about to learn. Truth be told, Dana and I were stoked about the idea of being related. Our friendship made us feel like we were sisters already, but we couldn't understand how we could have been related this whole time and had never known, until my mom opened up with the truth about our family. According to my mom, one of the 2 names that Dana's mom recognized was indeed a member of my family. The reason neither I or my mom ever heard about him is because he was exiled. And I mean legit exiled, like some straight up we don't talk about Bruno stuff. She practically had to pull my grandmother's teeth to learn the whole truth behind his expulsion. My ancestor, who we'll call James, was completely disowned by our family because, wait for it, he was in love with a black woman. This black woman, who we'll call Mary, was the ancestor of Dana and her mom. So the story was, James was always a fan of diversity. He attended several civil rights movements, marches, and even advocated heavily for the equal rights of African American people during a time where that was unthinkable. He had no shame in this, but his parents hated him for it. Since James worked for his father, his parents even went so far as to force him to have shifts that would directly interfere with him going to protests and marches. One night during a civil rights protest, James was driving home from work and a woman literally swung open his door, jumped in his passenger seat, and ordered him to drive. James apparently did not hesitate in driving off with this new female companion. He even convinced her to get into his trunk in order to avoid any issues while driving through the neighborhoods in case people were looking for protesters. I wouldn't say it was love at first sight, but she definitely made an impression. So much of an impression that James and Mary began seeing each other. When things began to get serious, James decided to inform his parents. Sadly, they forbade it, stating that if he continued to see her, he was dead to them. So James took all he had and left. He built an entirely new life with Mary that had obviously been successful given where we are now. Not a single day goes by that I don't talk to Dana. In fact, I'll be standing as her proud maid of honor next month, and I can't wait for our children to know the story of how we're all connected. Story time on when I thought my mom was a genuine serial killer, submitted by Katrina. Now, to preface this story, I have to tell you I was only 8 years old. I was a latchkey kid and my mom was frequently working. We still have a pretty great relationship, it's just I didn't see her very often sometimes. I grew up in a household where it was me, my mom, and my older brother. And we all knew that my mom kept all the good snacks in her closet. I'm talking Oreos, Rice Krispie treats, the good kind of cereal. And she knew we knew. So one day when she was at work, I went fumbling in her closet looking for some Rice crispy treats because they were my favorite. But in my pursuit to find them, I stumbled across her grown-up toy. I don't know what to call it so TikTok won't ban me, but we all know what we're talking about here. But I was 8 and I didn't understand that these weren't real body parts. So I seriously thought my mother had cut off some poor man's Peter Wacker and left it in her closet as a trophy. So I did the only thing my little mind could think: hide it. That way, if the police ever came looking for it, no one would know where it was but me. You'll never believe how my mom responded when she got home from work. To my utter surprise, my mother said nothing. Nothing at all. After a few days, I kind of got concerned. Maybe she hadn't noticed it was missing, or maybe she thought she destroyed it already. After all, she did tend to forget things a lot, and I felt like I did her a solid by getting rid of it in the first place. After a few days, I felt like I should be rewarded, so I made my casual trip to her closet for more snacks. After fumbling around a little, I found another one of her toys, and this is where it all began for me. In my little mind, she wasn't just a murderer anymore, she was a serial killer at this point, because apparently when I took her trophy the first time, she went and got another. She found another man, cut off his Peter Wacker, and had an entirely new trophy on her hands. The amount of guilt I felt was unimaginable, so I did the only thing I could think of. I told my older brother. I brought him the first toy that I found, gathered the second, burst into his room, and yelled, "Mom is a serial killer. I found her trophies," and I dumped them on the side of his bed. Now, instead of him explaining to me the situation, he actually went along with it, and we made a plan to confront our mother. You'll never believe how she took it. When my mother finally got home, she was carrying a handful of groceries. My original plan was to put the toys on the table and ask her about them. However, my brother had another plan that he didn't quite fill me in on. As soon as my mother made it to the kitchen, he tossed one of her toys to her. It ended up hitting her in the chest and landing in one of the grocery bags. The conversation went something like this: "We found your trophies." "What? Your trophies, Mom. We found them in the closet." "What the hell were you doing in my closet, Curtis?" "I was just looking for snacks," I chimed in. "It doesn't matter. We found them and we want to know where the bodies are," my brother interrupted. My mom paused for a moment and looked at him before looking at me and then back at him. "Bodies?" she questioned. "Yeah. The victims that these belong to." My brother pointed to the other toy on the table. To my surprise, my mother burst into laughter. I mean, to the point where she was kneeling over and gasping for air. "Well, fine," she answered. "We'll have dinner, and afterwards I'll tell you the truth." I was ecstatic. After days of sitting on this, I would finally hear the truth from my mother herself. My mom, being so calm throughout the entire ordeal, nearly made the dinner unbearable. When we were eventually finished, my brother was the one who spoke first, basically asking my mom what was up. She put her hands on the table and basically said that she wanted to turn herself into the police and that she would make plans for us to live with my grandmother so that she could do her time in prison. From what I could remember, I started crying immediately, and I became almost hysterical when she pulled out her phone and started dialing. My brother ended up fake crying in the background when my mom finally got up from the table and started mumbling into her phone. When she got to the window closest to our front door, she stared into the distance as if she was really contemplating what our lives would be like without her, while I was in the background crying, telling her I was sorry and that I would never go in her closet again. After she finally hung up the phone, my brother walked over and told her she was doing the right thing, and then the doorbell rang, and my brother announced that the police were here. But before I was able to throw a genuine fit, my mother stopped me, got down on her knees and said, "See how bad this could have gotten, all because you went in my closet and touched and took something that did not belong to you. So while your moms would have punished you and been done with it, mine just decided to psychologically damage me to the point where I have never gone in her closet for anything since."
Story time on how I caught my dad cheating on my mom with her twin sister, and I didn't even realize it. Okay, so boom. My mom and my dad had been together for 14 years up until this point. And my mom was actually pregnant with my soon-to-be little sister. My mom and my dad almost never argued. They had a pretty solid relationship, or so I thought. And my mom was very close to her twin sister for obvious reasons. I mean, they're twins. Well, one day when my parents was at work, I decided to skip school with my friends and go to the movie theaters instead. But I needed some money. So I was planning on going home to get money out of my mom's purse since she never noticed when I took anything. I assumed the house was empty because I was usually the first one home, then my mom, then my dad. Remember that because that's important for later on in the story. Y'all, I ran into the house and I went straight for my parents' room. I mean, I was loud. I didn't hear any moaning, y'all. Guess he was doing a bad job. But anyways, I opened that door and there it was. Like for part 2. Part 2 on how I caught my dad cheating on my mom with her twin sister, and I didn't even realize it. So like I said, I opened the door into the room and there it was. My dad and my mom's sister literally staring at me in shock. I closed that door so fast and ran to my room. I didn't even give him a chance to react. Y'all, I didn't even realize that wasn't my mom. Don't worry though, cause I eventually did. Stick with me. But yeah, I was panicking on how I was going to explain why I skipped school and that I just walked in on them. I was waiting for them to come talk to me, but they never did. About 4 hours later, my real mom came home and screamed that she got food for us. Now remember what I said. I'm usually the first home, then my mom, then my dad. So my mom only bought food for me and her, assuming that her husband wasn't gonna be home till later. So anyways, I went downstairs and told my mom sorry about earlier. She was confused and said what happened earlier. And this is when it got real, y'all. Life for part 3. Part 3 on how I caught my dad cheating on my mom with her twin sister, and I didn't even realize it. So like I said, I told my mom I'm sorry about what happened earlier, and she said, what happened earlier? Y'all, my stupid ass. I really thought that was my mom's way of trying to act like nothing ever happened. So I just laughed. But then I said, where's dad's food? Then my mom said, you know he doesn't come home from work till later, so the food will spoil by then. Y'all, at that very moment, it hit me. I realized that when I opened the door for that split second, I didn't see my mom have a pregnant belly. So out of nowhere, I made that, oh my gosh, I just realized something noise. You know that noise. It goes like this. So my mom's still confused, asking, what's wrong? I said, Mom, were you here earlier? She said, of course not, honey. I was at work the whole day. I screamed, oh my gosh, Mom, Dad is cheating on you with Lily. My mom immediately stopped eating. Like for part 4. Part 4 on how I caught my dad cheating on my mom with her twin sister, and I didn't even realize it. So like I said, I screamed, oh my gosh, Mom, Dad is cheating on you with Lily. Then my mom immediately stopped eating. My mom looked at me so serious and said, what are you talking about? And I explained everything to her. The anger my mom had is just something I can't explain. Let me remind you that my mom is pregnant and she's finding out that her husband is cheating on her with her twin sister while pregnant, and she's finding out by her daughter. My dad was a dead man. Once he came home, his life fell apart. He cried and begged my mom not to leave him, but nope, she divorced him and took him for everything he got, might I add. My mom couldn't even look at her sister, so their relationship was never the same. And it doesn't help that my mom slept with her boyfriend a year later. My mom is pet at tea. I still get to see my dad, but I always have that scene in the back of my head. But hey, I never got in trouble for ditching school, so it all worked out. Story time on how me and my stepdad were doing the nasty and my mom walked in on us. Okay, so boom. I was 18 at the time and my stepdad was 40. My stepdad been with my mom for like 2 years and it's only the 3 of us in the house. My stepdad always treated me well and gave me lots of money. Every time my mom would tell me no, here comes my stepdad to the rescue, turning that to a yes. Me and my stepdad were alone together a lot and it would be very flirty between us. As the days went by, we got flirtier and flirtier and farther and farther. It started off as flirting, then we cuddled, and then cuddling turned into making out. I literally couldn't wait till my mom goes to work so I could spend time with him. My mom didn't suspect a thing. When my mom was home, I barely talked to my stepdad and I always stayed in my room. At this point, me and my stepdad didn't do the nasty yet, but this night I was gonna make sure it happened. Cause I seen my stepdad kiss my mom goodbye and I was pissed. Once she left, I turned it up. Like for part 2. Part 2 on how me and my stepdad were doing the nasty and my mom walked in on us. So like I said, my mom went to work and business started as usual. My stepdad was in the living room picking a movie, so I came down from my room and cuddled with him in the couch. We started making out and all of a sudden my mom was calling my stepdad's phone. He tried to answer, but I took his phone and put it on do not disturb mode. I wanted him all to myself. I got on top of him and things got real. All of a sudden, we were both on the couch undressed going crazy. And just when we were about to start doing the nasty, my mom screamed, "Get off of her!" My stepdad and I both jumped up and I was shocked and terrified. He ran to my mom saying, "Please let me explain," and my mom slapped him. Like for part 3. Part 3 on how me and my stepdad were doing the nasty and my mom walked in on us. So like I said, my mom slapped my stepdad and said, "Get out!" She slapped him so hard I felt it across the room. He begged her to talk to him, but once she called the cops, he left. My mom took my phone and seen all the messages between us and gave me the whooping of a lifetime. My mom disowned me and kicked me out. I'm talking homeless. I had to live with one of my friends. I tried to talk to my stepdad, but he was too busy trying to get back with my mom. He actually wanted nothing to do with me either. I lost all of my family and even a good portion of my friends. A year later, which is now currently, I still have no contact with anyone in my family. But I'm working on apologizing and making it up to my mom. Wish me luck. Story time on how my dad found out I had an OnlyFans and was using it to batter his dough. Okay, so boom. I was 18 at the time I started doing my OnlyFans. My OnlyFans was doing good, so I was able to move out and get my own spot. My dad was single and he lived alone, so I always came over to visit him every now and then. I never told my dad I did OnlyFans, and when he would ask me what my job was, I would just say I work from home, doing like customer service. Well, I was servicing the customers, all right. And little did I know he was one of them. Well, one day I went to go visit my dad and he was in his room watching some TV. He told me his computer wasn't working and if I could take a look at it and fix it for him. You know, typical things that parents usually ask their kids for. So I go over to the computer to take a look at it and see what's going on. Child, little did I know once I fixed that computer, I was going to be in for a rude awakening. Like for part 2. Part 2 on how my dad found out I had an OnlyFans and was using it to batter his dough. So like I said, I went to go visit my dad and he asked me to take a look at the computer because it wasn't working. Now, when I went over to the computer, once I took a look at everything, I found out what the issue was pretty quickly. The Ethernet cable wasn't plugged all the way in, so the internet wasn't working. I plugged it back in and everything was fine. Once I refreshed everything, I know that Google restore option. Yeah, that popped up and I was like, let me restore everything for him, thinking that he was going to be happy that everything was still saved. Well, once I restored everything, 6 tabs opened up and OnlyFans was one of them. I was shocked that he even had an OnlyFans account. So I clicked on the tab and I signed in. I know, y'all probably like, why? But I mean, I was nosy. Y'all telling me I wouldn't be either. He was signed into his account, so I started looking through it. All of a sudden, my heart dropped. There was my OnlyFans and he had exclusive content. Like for part 3. Part 3 on how my dad found out I had an OnlyFans and was using it to batter his dough. So like I said, he was signed into his OnlyFans, so I started looking through it. And I found out that he was subscribed to me for a whole year. He had the year subscription. Do you hear me? He was one of the customers that were getting exclusive content. He was seeing everything. And I know y'all must be asking, why would he watch his daughter to, batter his dough? Well, he kind of doesn't know it's me. So my OnlyFans is anonymous, like this story. I wear a bejeweled ski mask in all my pictures and videos, and my name is obviously fake. My dad is watching me, and I mean all of me, but he doesn't know it's me. So I closed it and told him everything was fixed, but I had to go home. Told him that I forgot to meet up with a friend. So he said, okay, thanks, drive safe, sweetie. I cringed. Went home, had a nervous breakdown, and learned how to block him. And now I have to live the rest of my life knowing my dad used my content for battering.